Hi everyone, welcome. We are going to do a small introduction before we start our Walkie Talkie. My name is Nicola Trezzi. I'm an independent writer and curator based in Tel Aviv, where I also direct the MFA program, Master of Fine Art at Bezalel Academy of Art and Design. And I'm also a contributing editor at Flash Art International.
Hi, I'm Rivka Saker, the chairperson of Sotheby's in Israel. I've been running the office for since '82, so over 33 years, 34 years. And in the last 12 years, since 2004, I started an organization called Artissima, which helps promote, expose, and create awareness and understanding for contemporary art from Israel. It's at the same time I live between New York and Tel Aviv, and have an Israeli art collection, quite a substantial one in Israel, and an international art collection in New York, which goes from 20th century works on paper and sculptures until contemporary.
Great. So we are gonna move to the first booth, which is Zomer, contemporary art. So we'll continue there. Follow us. So we are in the first station at Zomer Gallery, which is a gallery in Tel Aviv that it's one of the leading galleries, and we will continue with two more Israeli galleries. I want to ask you, Rivka, when you started to collect, and how was what made you starting?
Okay, so I started really early in my life, because a lot since I was a teenager, and definitely later while I was in university, I had a lot of artist friends. I started collecting then, so it's now probably almost 50 years. And but very few works that were part of my early collection are still important, and but I would say from 40 years ago, a lot of the works that I bought when I was a little bit more aware of the art scene in Tel Aviv are still very much part of my collection today.
And and before, I want to also ask you about Artist, but we just wanted to start here because this is these two works by Nama Arad, who is a young Israeli artist based in Tel Aviv, and Rivka owns one of her works, so it was nice for us that we could make the connection.
Right. I came across her work when she started to study in Chicago at the MFA program in Chicago. She spent a few years in Chicago. Her work is basically sculptures that relate to day-to-day situations, but always with humor and some kind of a really original outlook. So if you look at this telephone booth, it's actually a paper folder but made into a telephone booth. Or these are this carpet, which is made of these
Plastic shades, I think.
shades,
She cut
plastic
herself one after the other.
Right, she cuts them, she puts them together, and uses just IKEA lamps to create these weights and spaces.
And I believe these three pieces were all in the exhibition of Nama, the Tel Aviv Museum of Art.
That's true.
Yeah, so, okay, maybe we continue to the next. Yeah, let's go. Maybe you can tell us how you started Artis, and what is the budget, and what is the structure of the organization of Artis.
Okay, Artis started in 2004, really with the idea to create a one-week event of contemporary art from Israel in New York. But over the years, and actually since 2007, it became a non-for-profit. It's a private organization Now, in the last few years, our yearly budget is close to $1 million, and we have a few programs. One of them is bringing curators, writers, and museum directors in two groups twice a year to Israel. Nicola was one of the first group in 2008, and since then became actually a Tel Avivian, as he is now the head of the MFA program in the Academy of Bezalel, which is in Tel Aviv. The other program is really supporting exhibitions of artists all over the world. So if a non-commercial institute is putting up a show, they can apply for a grant. And by today, we have given over 220 grants to different exhibitions around the world in 28 countries and 5 continents, Australia, Africa, and the rest. So it became really a known and very popular. We have a very good and strong website that is today a source of information for a lot of MFA students and PhDs writing about Israeli art.
Yeah, I think what's really special about the Israeli art scene is that there's a very vibrant scene of Israeli artists, but it's also very international. And I think the booth where we are here with Braverman, it's a proof that it's a gallery in Tel Aviv that shows very prominent Israeli artists together with international artists like Robin Rose that we see there, this series of photographs. So I think we want you to experience 3 Israeli galleries, but with the idea that Israel is really a good combination of local artists and international artists that are showing in galleries, in museums, and so on. I think you would agree with me.
Absolutely. I think there are 2 very important museums in Israel, the Israel Museum and the Tel Aviv Museum. Both have regularly growing their collections of contemporary art, buying works in Israel and internationally. And
you are involved with both because you are co-chair of the Israeli Committee for Israeli Art,
right.
And you also are constantly working with the Tel Aviv Museum with donations of Israeli and international contemporary art.
Right, because somehow over the years I got to the lucky situation where I can influence and contribute and work together and make it really, try to make it more
advanced and more contemporary, definitely. Let's move to the last stop.
I think maybe you should tell a little bit about your experience in the Tel Aviv art scene and why do you find it so fascinating?
Yeah, as you were saying, I came to Tel Aviv in 2008 with the trip for professionals organized by Artissima, and I immediately saw a very dynamic scene, extremely dynamic, extremely full of energy, and the place itself is full of energy and really unique. It was my first time in Israel, and I didn't know so much about it, and in a very natural way I came again and again for research or for exhibitions, for residencies, and I became more and more aware of the situation. And this the culmination was to just apply for a job and become very based there, and this was how it went. And I think what is unique in Israel is the fact that it's a very small art scene and is a place with in a very special condition in terms of geopolitics and history, and yet it is a place capable of providing an extremely high quality of contemporary art, and again a very vibrant scene with museums that can definitely compete with other institutions abroad and galleries in the same way, and last but not least artists who can really be within the international scene and create works that are comparable to works made in New York, in Paris, in Milan, and so on. So this was one of the, for these reasons, I decided to, after 7 years in New York, to just be based in Tel Aviv. So.
Okay. I think also it's interesting as you walk around this fair and we talk about a global world, and you think, how is it an international language? Can you still realize or understand the sources where the artists come from? I think in Israel it's very clear, and we have a very famous poet, Chernichovsky, that said that the person is actually in the forms of his native country, something that really relates. And I think as much as the Israeli artists today, especially the younger generation, are traveling and they're partly in New York, Berlin, London, Chicago, or any other place, you can always still see the collective memory and the belonging to a certain place or coming for a certain place. And I think when you walk around this fair that has also parts of quite a serious part of galleries from all over the world, you can feel that they are using the same language, talking the same language, but still expressing something different, and the locality becomes more important. I think an interesting phenomena is on this wall here in the gallery, the work by Judith Levine, which is a work from the 70s, which is actually the Israeli art pauvre. And you see she's using very basic materials of objets trouvés, found objects. She paints some of them, and this is called Matisse work, you can see with the flower. I have a few of her works in my collection, another one from the same series called Mondrian, but I find it really fascinating how actually you can see that although it has the armchair and the table and things that very much represent our local environment, you can still see and it can still talk in the way that it express to everyone the same ideas.
And I think also within the context of Dvir Gallery, I would like to respond from this work with the work over there of Latifa Ishash. Maybe we can just look at it. And Latifa Ishash is an artist born in Morocco who lives, I believe, between France and Switzerland. And this is a very interesting example because it is a work made by the artist, but made during one of her stays in Israel. And this is a philosophy that Dvir Gallery uses very often, which is very interesting, to invite artists from different countries that they represent. Instead of shipping works from wherever they are based, they invite the artists to Israel to spend time in Israel and to create works on site. And here, maybe for people who are not aware of the culture, of the history in Israel, it might seem like a piece like any other, but in fact the design, this coffee table, comes from a very specific style of design that you find mostly in flea markets, mostly in the flea market in Jaffa, where you can find these pieces of design. They are inspired by the Bauhaus, which had a strong influence in Israel, coming all the Bauhaus that escaped Germany. Some of them came to Israel, and that's why we have a lot of Bauhaus in Israel. And then you see the pomegranate, which is within the Jewish culture a fruit with a lot of meaning that relate to Rosh Hashanah, which is the beginning of the Jewish year. And the pomegranate, because of this multiplicity that stays inside one unit, represents fertility and the beginning of a new year full of new things to come. So it's really nice that an artist that has no connection to Israel, from Morocco, living in Europe, comes and creates a work that is very connected to the situation.
Right. Yeah, the modernist, this kind of modernist tables, which are now very much in fashion from the 50s, actually were part of every house in Tel Aviv at the time. So it's nice to see.
Yeah.
Maybe we can also talk about
Ariel Schlesinger, sure.
because Ariel is another example of an Israeli artist that lives in another place. He lives in Berlin. His things are usually based on some kind of scientific vision or a creation of a situation that you have to think twice. Is it really possible? Because it's not manipulated in the photograph. He's manipulating the situation, but the photograph is actually the image taken from the original site. So you can see here, and I think it's very clear with the glass and the candle that the glass is leaning on the candle, but the candle is lit inside the glass with the oil. And he actually, over the fair here, I think I saw him in three or
I think
four
he
galas
works with Gregor Podnar and
with Minini.
and with Massimo Minini, I believe.
Right,
So he's he's a very interesting artist in his mid-30s, late 30s, I
Late
believe.
30s, and actually I have also in my collection two of his works, some from his early works, very early works, and some from about 4 years ago, a work he did in Berlin.
And he's also a graduate of Bezalel, of the academy where I
Exactly.
work. So great.
Talk about Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv has really a very big community of artists today, and and a very vivid and lively bohemian life. And because the one great advantage of Israel is not its politics, it's the weather. Really, the life and the nightlife in Tel Aviv is extremely lively and vivid. And I think one of the problems that we have, because it is that Israel is really a small closed country, people don't, it's not like in Europe when you get on a train and you go to Paris or in another city easily. So I think this was one of the reasons that pushed a lot of the artists to try and develop careers in different cities around the world. But you can find that it's very part of their life that they keep coming back and continue to do work in Israel and relate to things in the local scene.
And I think this is also reflected by the galleries, which are all trying to create a good balance between an international program, but also really, coming, for instance, to MFA exhibitions to find new young Israeli artists that they would represent. And also historically, like as we saw with an artist like Judith Levine, who has been working since I would say the early 70s or even earlier. So I think this balance it's very healthy in many ways. But I would also say that for those who never visited or who are not familiar, for me, after 7 years based in New York, and I think you living between New York and Tel Aviv, I would say that Tel Aviv has the pace and the active tone, this idea of like a lot of things going on similarly to New York, but at the same time we are on the Mediterranean Sea and there's great food and there's the beach and people go to the beach every day. So it's a very interesting combination between this very entrepreneurial spirit, a lot of startup companies, but at the same time also this joy for life, which is very unique.
And I think another interesting thing about the Israeli scene is that you have probably you came across a lot of the video artists from Israel, which are very much, there is a little less video in the fair this time, but in the last years, and I'm sure that names like Yael Bartana, Omer Fast, Guy Benner, Michal Rovner, Sigalit Landau, there are quite a lot of video artists that have done extremely important work. And if you look at the list of the most important 100 video artists in the world, in no proportion, I think you will find that there are about 10 artists from Israel. And this is a really reflection of this very vivid scene that is there now.
Thank you very much for following us, and come to visit. Come to Tel Aviv to visit us, right?
You are the PR of Tel Aviv.
No, it's not. It's for their own
experience.
yes,
Absolutely.
exactly. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.